Okay. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Great. So welcome everyone today to this welcome everyone to this month's Schumacher Conversation. My name is Natasha Holst, and I am the Schumacher Center's Program Director for European Land Commons. I'm talking to you today from just outside Amsterdam, the Netherlands. In the spirit of the Schumacher Center, and starting where you are, I'm also the founder of Stichting Grond van Bestaan, that I founded together with a number of other people to realize community land trusts and new forms of land ownership in the Netherlands. I'm also an activist for access to land, for agroecological farmers, and social and ecological and cultural purposes. Together with a growing number of people and organizations, we've started 2 years ago an initiative to create a commons-based 60-hectare agroecological food park on the outskirts of Amsterdam called Voedselpark Amsterdam, on the last farmland of the city, as an alternative to massive grey business park distribution center. So, welcome again. And I just want to introduce the Schumacher Conversations, Envisioning the Next 50 Years. So as part of the celebration of the 50th anniversary of the publication of Small is Beautiful, we're going to have a number of conversations, and this conversation for today is called Reallocating Land from Market to Commons. So the Schumacher Center was founded in 1980 to work on envisioning the elements of a just and regenerative global economy, and undertakes this and applies this elements in its home region of the Berkshires in Western Massachusetts, and then develops the educational programs to share results more broadly, thus encouraging replication. 2023 marks the 50th anniversary of the book Small is Beautiful. This 50th anniversary is our opportunity to advance the solutions that build on Schumacher's vision. Central to our 2023 celebrations are this monthly series, convening new economic thinkers, builders, and activists to share their latest insights and advance common paths forward. 2023 Schumacher Conversation brings together these change makers from a range of fields whose work today is actively shaping a small is beautiful future, focused around key themes and fields of activism. Each online conversation will chart actionable pathways towards just regenerative planet. So today, it is my great pleasure to introduce our fourth installment of the Schumacher Conversation, Reallocating Land from Market to Commons. Personally, I cannot imagine a more important conversation with more inspirational people. Small is Beautiful might be more relevant now than it was in 1973. Schumacher had a prescient vision. Let me read you a quote from chapter 7, The Proper Use of Land. In the simple question of how we treat land, next to people, our most precious resource, our entire way of life is involved. And before our policies with regard to land will really be changed, there will have to be a great deal of philosophical, not to say religious change. So what is the proper use of land? Now, in the 21st century, it's becoming increasingly clear that neither the state nor the market are able to steward land for future generations. The current system tends to promote extractive, market-driven uses. The institutional logic of property rights, markets, and finance make it difficult for people to think and act outside of the profit and loss system. But if not the market and not the state, what is the alternative? Our guests today have spent their working lives thinking and creating alternatives. Land as commons, community land trusts, community-supported agriculture are all examples of commons-based models for aligning land with true ecological sustainability. These systems are based on meaningful relationships with place, a sense of belonging to the land, augmented with the systems of law and culture to support these goals. In diverse geographical and cultural contexts, commons creating social systems can open up new possibilities of eco-friendly and inclusive land stewardship, making ecological farming, nature, and affordable housing, amongst other things, possible. Freeing land from conventional financial markets and market pressures brings different types of people into shared purpose, allowing social and ecological values to increase and strengthening the personal and political will for deeper change. So I will now go ahead and introduce our guests, who you'll all be waiting for. So it's my great honor to welcome and introduce our guests. First of all, Sjoerd Wartenaar, a sustainable food systems advocate, a great person and founder of Terre de Liens, a civil society organization devoted to ecologically friendly agriculture and affordable access to land. Terre de Liens addresses the difficulties organic and peasant farmers face to secure agricultural land. Sjoerd and Terre de Liens are also one of the founders of the European Access to Land Network. Our second guest is based in the US, and that is Severine von Tscharner Fleming. She is an organic farmer, advocate, publisher, and organizer based in Maine. She serves as a founding board member, president of Agrarian Trust, a US land access advocacy organization working in the framework of the commons around issues of land succession. And our third guest is peace pilgrim, lifelong activist, and former monk, Satish Kumar. He has been inspiring global change for over 50 years, an author and speaker. Satish founded the Resurgence Trust and an educational charity. He was the editor of the charities magazine, Resurgence and Ecologist, for over 40 years, and also the founder of the Schumacher College. So first of all, I will pass over to Sjoerd. Welcome, Sjoerd.
Hello.
Hello.
Good afternoon, I should say. Here is the evening, but it's afternoon for you there in the United States. Well, my name is Sjoerd Wartenaar, and I'm of the generation directly influenced by Schumacher. By Schumacher's book, Small is Beautiful. The ideas of Schumacher contributed certainly to our decision to make in 1972 the step back to nature, changing our well-to-do town existence in Amsterdam into a frugal and uncertain peasant future in the mountainous pre-Alps in the southeast of France. In the first years on the land, we received young students looking for an experience, sharing our life, and in the evenings, we read together in a Dutch translation, Schumacher's Small is Beautiful. Here you see, this is from 73 or 75 or something, and these are all my notes I found again. My notes of that evening still exist, pages long. I see his negative remark on Keynes, who said that we need to be unscrupulous till we have enough, and then we can be scrupulous. And so Schumacher states that the development of transport and communication can open, but they also do disroot. I see a note about ideas. One of the biggest dangers of our time, writes Schumacher, is that people with small, superficial, incoherent ideas fill their emptiness with wild, fantastic political views or notions. What happens today? He was so right. The separation of producer-consumer brings trouble, says Schumacher. On the one side, you try to produce cheap and often superfluous, and on the other side, as a consumer, you try to be careful and economical, a contradictory situation. We are gathering in our youth knowledge and experience, says the author, and we arrange all that mass and mess, becoming on age. In our life, we arrange Schumacher's ideas mixed with our experiences as farmers and actors of change. The last part of the book shows his doubt, being uncertain about the always ongoing change and the lightness of the predictability of our future. Planning, strategy, and all the other words used to discuss what we don't know. Schumacher talks about science and the absoluteness of their findings that neglects human freedom. How clear he saw, as my great inspirator Aldous Huxley, as Ivan Ilyich, as Karl Polanyi, as Wendell Berry, and so many others, how clear they foresaw what is still going on in an ever more dazzling whirlpool. Lately, I saw a remark of another prophet, Henri Bergson, the French philosopher, who said, "Don't listen too much to them, see what they do." And there we become by our Terre de Liens adventure, an organization started after long years of agricultural practice and the search for partners to start the fight for soil, ground, earth, land as commons. My slogan following Bergson's remark became, "No idea without action, no action without idea." Just let us say that the start of Terre de Liens was wondrous, with a small group of dedicated people who became friends for life. The actual results are dazzling to me and tiny for the worshippers of the gigantic. We learned what means democracy, compromise, delegation, trust. Today we have a commandeering company with 20,000 shareholders, bringing together 150 million euros, owning 350 farms, hired to more than 600 farmers on 20,000 acres. Amidst the shareholders, we have the state bank and pension funds who are obliged by law to invest 5% of their capital in the social and solidarity economy. Always Schumacher's ideas shimmer through the trees. The Terre de Liens Federation of 18 regional associations, themselves organized in several commissions with 1,500 volunteers, 150 employees, included those of the third pillar, a foundation receiving grants, farms, legs, shares of the commandeering company. We learned how difficult it is to manage a big organization and stay open to improvisation, resilience, friendship, to honor our name, Terre de Liens, land of connections. Luckily, the first signs of decentralization are appearing, which is a good sign, to avoid bureaucracy. The eternal dilemma, being big to defend smallness, that is beautiful. Anyhow, let us do what we can and keep in mind that living in the Kali Yuga, I said that for our other member of the conference, Satish Kumar, who knows certainly what I mean. Kali Yuga makes limits inevitable. Natasha asked me why we started Terre de Liens, and I think my previous text explains that already a little bit. I was fed up with congresses, conferences, meetings, a lot of paper, poor results. As I said, nothing gives more satisfaction than the real creation of farms, artisanal or processing activities. Looking to seeds coming out of the soil will always be a miracle, as are insects, birds, and the wind. To make that happen, I accept meetings, but the moment people start to talk about strategy, concepts, efficiency, scenarios, methods, a warning bell is ringing in me. Budget is a more difficult thing to avoid. Anyhow, we created this small group. We limited ourselves to the subject we had all well in mind, found the right word, terre de lien, land of connections, persuaded a lot of people to become shareholder, and improved the existing systems. The goal is to make as much examples possible. I have some keynotes on my desk, and I see, so I didn't read your books, Satish Kumar, that there is a note of Satish Kumar on my desk on Gandhi, who said, the example is not the best way to convince, it is the only way. The second note is on the book Satish Kumar wrote, You Are, So I Am. Never I saw a title so complete that you can imagine the whole text. I didn't read the book, but I know the text. I know it. It is what I tried poorly to practice all my life. Is this too short? Because I can tell much more. Natasha.
Yes, David. Have we gone over time? I forgot. I was listening to Stuart so intently that I didn't see if I think, well, a few more minutes.
Well, I have also another slogan of a word of Karl Polanyi, who said, the day our ancestors made land a commodity was a black day for humanity. That's also a very important thing, I know. And why I'm here, in fact, is the fact that we met in our small village where we came from Amsterdam in the pre-Alps of the Drôme in France. We met 6 old people who were living what I always say were living the end of the civilization. They were the last representatives of an endless chain of transmission. People gave their knowledge to their children. The children put a little bit on it and continued. And that these people were suddenly cut off by technology of this system. The chain was broken. And that, as we saw how much these people were knowing, how complete they were, how much they knew from nature, we thought our task should be to repair that chain. And I think when I'm here, that is the whole basis of terre de lien, of my presence still in agriculture, my presence still on the farm, which I'm now not doing anymore, but we have found successors to do it. We do goats and plants and so on. And I think these old people were so astonished that we were interested in their knowledge, but we knew nothing. We came from Amsterdam, from a complete other circumstances, back to nature, and then they learned us, in fact, their way of doing, and what we did was making it adaptable to modern times, but not to throw it away. In contrary, and as today, as I do my hobby is restoring terraces in the backland of my village, and I see my successors with their sheep and goats going in the woods. I'm very happy to see that, and that's I think that is the real reason of this presence of mine here.
Wow, thank you, Stuart. That's fantastic. And I think also moving on to Severine, you mentioned that, I mean, she's also inspired me, and so have you both. But didn't you also mention that you were inspired by terre de lien, Severine, to found the Agrarian Trust?
Well, it's thanks to terre de lien that we have Agrarian Trust. So the great thankfulness that I feel to Susan and to the Schumacher Center for New Economics, and to Bob Swan, her partner in thought, and this long-standing tradition of creating an enabling context for community self-determination, for laying out the principles and the inspiration and the tools, and making a model of long-term thinking and the commitment to the logistics of that. And so in Susan, that takes place when a young farmer comes and says, we're trying to study land reform. We want to know about the antecedent movements that we could draw from in order to approach access to land for young people who passionately want to farm and in no way can afford to buy the land. And she said, well, here's some books to read, and here's a organization you should go and check out in France. And so that was the inception of the Agrarian Trust, which found its first home with Schumacher. And then we started growing our circle of relation, and the great vulnerable learning process of what does it take to come back into relationship with one another, directly holding the reins of an economy ourselves, not delegating it to the market, not leaning on our historical habits of dominion and control and power hoarding that are in fact a long legacy, and especially in the violent and extractive history of American agriculture and settlement, that we have quite some habits to shake as we come into these new relationships. So this acknowledgement that that we're in crisis, I think, is felt in the hearts of all the young farmers. I've had the pleasure now 20 years in this movement of sustainable agriculture with other young people who want to put our lives, our physical bodies, back into contact with the living earth, and recognizing that food is physical, it's physical work, and it is the fundamental understory of a new peaceful economy. And so if we don't have the food, we don't have the land part working, the other stuff doesn't come along. So the first thing also to mention is the humility to say, I'm not just going to be a farmer, I'm going to be a farmer because that's at the forefront of the change that needs to begin. And it's not just a service or a helpfulness or a kindness, it's also a position that gives us great joy. And especially this time of year, the germinal forces are rising and the soil is warm and the robins are singing, and it's a huge privilege to be in relationship to a farm on this time of year. So I'm feeling that myself. I'm looking out here on Cobscook Bay. We have this first of our extreme spring tides today, which is when the moon is pulling and the tides are showing the very lowest of the macroalgae. So we were up at dawn in this Passamaquoddy homeland, the people of the dawn, and we were out on slippery rocks harvesting the algae from the commons of the sea, and feeling extraordinary gratitude. So and these days in the US, it's becoming more and more common to acknowledge the land, the indigenous stewards of the land and the territories of the land where we are sitting as settlers. But obviously acknowledgement is not enough. There also is now a critical requirement for action. And so it's that action part that I want to reflect on today in terms of the learning of these past 6 years now of Agrarian Trust. What has that action taught us, and what are the phases that we've gone through in that? So obviously the vision of the Commons, the vision of Terre de Liens, the vision of Agrarian Trust is to meet these generations, those who want to pass on their lands and those who want to take over their lands, and to make a kind of a truce so that you don't have in this inflection a crisis where the deferred maintenance of the barn and the debt of the farm and the children who have left and the neighbors who want to speculate or develop, that those pressures don't overwhelm the farm and stop its momentum forward as a place of local food production. And of course, that's a chasm that is the ultimate intergenerational dilemma of every farm in the whole country. And especially when you have a big back to the land movement in the 60s and in the 70s in the organic movement. And then you have a whole lump, a demographic generation who are all coming into their retirement and all trying to solve this same problem. Well, good news is, meanwhile, you have another whole lump of young people coming in with a passionate desire to take over these farms and indeed to reclaim more land for CSA farming and agroecology and pasture-based livestock and happy chickens and currants. And we do a lot of berries here. So that's the problem that we set out wanting to solve, and wanting to solve it in a way that brought more people in to the process. That, there's a land back concept of making sure land can go back to indigenous control and land return and the promised land that has been stolen. Then there's also getting our backs involved, and then there's also getting the bucks involved of how does this land become held in a community economy? How do we have community ownership, community stewardship? And how are there enough people who care and are encircling this land to ensure that it is cared for over the long term? And I would say, obviously, the demand for this work, the demand for this outcome, the demand for this action, the appetite for this food is very strong. But also that the process, the human process of accommodating ourselves to how risky this is, how the committee work of it, the fundraising of it, the volunteership of it, the meetings of it are not just dutiful, helpers, but in fact, that is the process of getting back into relationship and holding, as I say, directly the reins of a new value system ourselves with our own bodies, and reconstituting our capacity for governance on a physical, on a human scale, at arm's reach of the land itself. And that in fact, the political leadership that we need from this next generation and the ecological leadership that we need to participate in our survival based on the facts that we have, not the fantasy that's projected and not the market what it tells us to do. That level of accountability and reciprocity and sensitivity is in fact a happy side influence or side outcome of that committee work. So obviously the risk of failure is there, and the tenderness and the vulnerability is there. We have, thankfully, a great set of traditions to draw from if we study the work of Elinor Ostrom and the principles that she discerned in her Nobel Prize winning work about commons governance and what kinds of engagement actually yields a durable maintenance of a living system. Was it a grazing system or a fishing system or an irrigation system? She studied what those principles were, and one, there's 8 of them, but I'm not going to list them all, but one that feels important this time of year is the sensing part. So in the spring, in the ditches of the acequia system, the shared water ditch, you have something called the limpia, and the limpia is the clean out. So it's physically you dig out the dirt to make the ditch run clear and deep and pure to bring the water from the river to all the farms. But it's also a group walking on the land, a group sensing, and a tuning in with the ecological reality, which is in flux every year, and which is tuning us as our bodies, our spiritual connection to the land, our commitment to the land, having all of us, each of us looking. Then we tap in not to the wounds of the colonial project, not to the need for reparations and the need for repair and healing, but in fact to this much older part of human experience of interpreting the landscape, of sensing the landscape. Where is nature going? Where is this system headed? Where am I looking for sustenance? And in this more ancient way of being, I feel is a major power that we need to draw from as we are adapting to our rapidly changing climate. And the more people can come into this relational sensing work, acknowledging the risk, acknowledging the tedium, acknowledging the emails, what a pain it is to have to raise $1 million to save a farm, how painfully slow it can be, is already very apparent to all. But that it's worth the risk. And that's the insight that all of us who have entered agriculture with our good hearts see is if you come in to agriculture, your tolerance for adversity grows up, your tolerance for heartbreak goes up, and that it's worth it. It's worth the risk. So anyway, I don't want to go too long, except that this improvisation that Sjord was talking about, of not getting stuck in bureaucracies and projections and pre-configurations of success, that the first rule of improvisation is yes and that is the project of joining hands together and saying, well, let's try. And I think that's the experiment that we're inviting the communities who continue to show up in the threshold of Agrarian Trust. That's the invitation that we offer, is how can we enable these communities to find their own locally adapted solution informed by their own insights and needs and the historical character of the land that they're surrounding, and allow it to, each one differently, grow up.
Thank you.
I think that's all I have time for.
Thank you so much, Severine. That's fantastic. And kind of continuing on, and as Severine was inspired by Sjord, and Sjord was inspired by Satish, and also the Vinova, who was well, maybe you can talk a little bit more about that, Satish Kumar. Welcome, and great to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. It's a great pleasure to be part of Schumacher Center for New Economics and this series of conversations being held to commemorate the 50th anniversary of publication of Small is Beautiful. I would like to start with speaking a little bit about Vinoba Bhave. After Mahatma Gandhi passed away, India became independent politically, but Vinoba said that India also needs to be independent economically and socially. And one thing which bring an end to poverty is to provide land to those who have no land. Because if you have land, then you can grow your food. You can grow a cotton tree or cotton crop to make clothes. You can have trees to build your house. You can have a well for your water. You can live a good life. So poverty cannot be brought to an end by industrialization, by providing jobs in the city, by government handouts. Poverty can be removed and reduced by distributing and redistributing land. But how do you do it? Either you can have an armed revolution like a communist revolution, or you can have government bringing law. That can take a long time, and governments are very reluctant to upset the landlords. They never do it. So Vinoba said, let's do it non-violently. And there was one village in India where there was a great uprising. The landless people were up in arms against the landlords because they were very poor. They had no food, they had no job, and landlords were living a very rich life. And so there was a violence, and the people who were arrested put in jail. Vinoba went there, and Vinoba went to the house to house to house, asking the landless people, how much land do you want to end this violence? And they all got together and they said, we are 40 families. In India, land is very scarce. So 40 family, if each family has 2 acres of land, just minimum 2 acres, then we can end this violence and we can live in harmony with our landlords. So Vinoba called a meeting in the evening of the village and invited all the landlords and all the landless, all the members of the village community. And there he spoke and said, after his speech, he said, one question I want to ask you. Are you prepared to give 80 acres of land as a donation, as a gift to 40 families of your village? Because without them, you cannot have farming. They are your workers and they live such a poor life. They grow food, they work hard, but they have no food. Those who grow food must have food. And so there was a stunned silence for quite a while. But after about 5 minutes of complete silence, one landlord stood up. His name was Ramachandra Reddy. And he said, I understand your appeal. I believe in non-violence. I will give not only 80 acres, but 100 acres of land for the poor in donation as a gift. Wow, there was a big applause. 20 acres extra as a common land where they can have a community facilities, they can have a community hall, they can have a little school, they can have a little kind of facilities and well and so on. So that was the first donation. And Vinoba could not sleep all night. He said, this problem is not only a problem of one village. This is a problem of the whole country. And he calculated that if 1/6 of land was donated all over India to the poor, there will be no one without land. Everybody will have minimum of 2 acres. And so next day he declared that I'm not going back to my community. I'm not going back to my home. I'm not going back to my ashram. I'm going to walk from village to village until every member of the Indian landless community has land. So he started walking, and he walked for 10 years and over 100,000 miles. And every day he was getting landlords coming and signing and giving land, day after day. And in the end, if you can imagine how much land he got in donations in a country like India, where land is so precious. People say you can have money, you can have anything else, but I cannot give land. he got 4 million acres of land. 4 million acres of land for distribution to the poor. That was a great non-violent revolution, I would say almost as great and equal to as getting India independence from the British. Because Vinoba said that as we don't own the sunshine, as we don't own the rain, we don't own the land. Land is not a property. We should not have ownership on the land. We should have a relationship with the land. Land is not a machine. Land is a living organism. Land is not a commodity. Land is a community. And therefore, we have no ownership of the land. We have only relationship with the land. We don't come with the land and we don't go with the land. Land is here for billions and billions of years. Land has sustained life of humans, animals, trees, birds, rivers. Everything is held safely by land. And so how can a few landlords can claim just because of a piece of paper that they own the land? It's a completely wrong idea. And so for me, that is a great example that how we can liberate land from the ownership. Now we are talking about from market to commons. I would like to make a suggestion. I would like to say anyone who wants to grow vegetables and food and want to have a land must have a right to have a piece of land, even half an acre, even a quarter of an acre, 1 acre, whatever it is. Who can create this common? Very difficult. It's a wonderful idea, but how can it happen? I believe that governments should take this responsibility. And in England or in the United Kingdom, we have a law since the Second World War. During the Second World War, the government of United Kingdom made a new law. And the new law was that anyone who wants to grow food will have piece of allotment. And their slogan was dig for victory. Because at that time, importing food from foreign countries was becoming very difficult because of the war situation. And so we had to become self-reliant in UK, United Kingdom, for our food. And so government brought a law that anyone who wants to have an allotment will be given an allotment as a right. I think that should be all over the world, and that should even be extended in Britain. In Britain, you can get a piece of land by law, but you have to wait 6 months, well, sometimes 1 year, sometimes 2 years before you get an allotment. That's too long. Government should have more land. Government should buy land from the landlords, those who want to sell it, near the cities, near the villages, and have a ready allotments as a commons, owned by commons. And of course, if you have an allotment, you can offer a bit of rent or a bit of something so that it can be maintained or somehow, if not completely Vinoba's ideals, and so as long as you are cultivating that land, you have that land. And government should have this legal responsibility that anyone who wants to have a piece of land will have land. That's what I would like to see, a land regulation all over the country, in the United States, in India, in Europe, in China, in Russia, wherever you are. If you want to have a piece of land, you should have a right to have a piece of land. Because we are soil. Human word comes from humus, and humus means soil. So human beings are literally soil beings. Even the Hebrew word Adam means soil, and Adam is the first human being. And then in Hindi, the name for man or woman or human being is Adami. Adami means soil. We are made of soil. Human beings are literally soil beings. Our food is soil transformed. Our clothes are soil transformed. The wood with which we build the house is soil transformed. It's a soil, it's the land which we have to that should be our identity. Land is our identity. Our identity is not that I'm an Indian, or I'm a US American, or I'm a French, or I'm a Dutch, or I'm a Chinese, or I'm a Japanese. Those identities are secondary. The primary identity is that I am indigenous. I am a child of the soil. I am the child of the land. Land is our identity. And so having access to land, and I'm very lucky and very fortunate. I have 2 acres of land and I grow all my vegetables. At Schumacher College, we have 9 acres of garden. And last year, Schumacher College students, and all students work on the land. All students work in the garden. The students produced 40,000 pounds worth of vegetables in 1 year last year for the college. And so in our college, Schumacher College, we have this rule: education of head, education of heart, and education of hands. What is education of hands? That you work on the soil, touch the soil. Soil is not dirty. Dirt is not dirty. Dirt is clean. It's a soap is dirty. Soil is not dirty. So touching the soil, putting your hands in the soil, growing your food is our primary part of education at Schumacher College. So we are following the ideals of Schumacher, and Small is Beautiful, which we are celebrating. Also, Schumacher College is celebrating the 50th anniversary of Small is Beautiful, but we are putting that in practice. It's not just a conversation. It's not just a lecture. It's not just a book. It's not just a talk. It's a practice. We have to, all of us, each and every one of us, every human being must be connected with the soil, with the land. Even you are a prime minister, you are a president, you are President Biden in America. He should have a garden. And I'm told that Obama and his wife Michelle, they created a garden in the White House. I hope it is still there, and I hope that Joe Biden and his wife are working on the land and doing some work on the land. Whoever you are, king, prince, president, prime minister, MP, professor, lecturer, journalist, doctor, whoever you are, you all eat food. Therefore, you have responsibility to grow some food and grow and cook some food. Without food, you cannot be a doctor, you cannot be a professor, you cannot be a prime minister, you cannot be an MP, you cannot be a congressman, you cannot be nothing. So it is our primary responsibility to grow food, touch the soil, be connected with the land. Then we are indigenous. To be indigenous is to be connected with the land. Without land, there is no life. At the moment, we see land as a resource for the economy. That's wrong. Land is not a resource for the economy. Land is a source of life itself. Land is life itself. It's not a resource. Economy of nature, economy of land is much greater than what we call the economy, which is not really economy. It's a moneynomy, and we call it economy. It's a misnamed. And so I'm passionate because of Vinoba, and because of I worked with him for 7 years, and I walked with him around India and begged for the land from the landlords and got the land and written paper. So Vinoba is my ideal, and I am a child of the land. My mother was a farmer. She was, every day she went to the farm, walked to the farm. She would never ride a horse. She will never go in a bullock cart. She will walk to the land and milk the cows, make the cheese, make the butter. So I grew up on the land, and so I have a passion for the land, and I want every single human being, whoever you are, however intellectual you are, however great writer you are, poet you are, singer you are, dancer you are, you have to eat food. If you eat food, you must participate in growing food. That is my passion. Thank you.
Thank you. Fantastic. I am so blown away by your speech, and I just wanted to invite the rest of the panelists to join in as well, and just have a conversation, and maybe you have some questions for Satish or Short or Severin. Yeah, so I mean, first of all, I just was so great to hear that story about Vinova and the Gramdam movement and the walking. What I always heard was that they gifted the land was gifted to the village. Is that right?
That's right. So
Yeah.
land will not belong to the person who's given. He
Yeah.
will have only right to cultivate and grow food as long as he or she or their children are growing food, they can have it. The moment they stop growing food, land will return to the village council, village assembly, village government, and the village government will decide who should have that land. But the guarantee should be they will work on the land, they will not sell it, they will not build on it, they will not make it a commodity, they will always keep it in food production.
And I also,
And that's a similar model. That's a similar model to the Agrarian Trust model, that the land is durable, affordable, dignified lease.
Yes.
And if another person, if that farm or that farm organism doesn't have a succession, then another one could come in.
Yeah.
And so in the same way, in the sea, for instance, where the sea belongs to all of us, and if you want to make a farm in the sea, you make a lease, but then the lease goes back to the state. You cannot then sell the rights.
Yeah. My Vinoba's words is, Vinoba would say, land does not belong to us. Sea does not belong to us. We humans belong to land. We humans belong to the sea. We are nature and we belong to nature. Nature does not belong to us. Because if we say even if we have a collective ownership of the sea or land, is not acceptable to Vinoba. There is no ownership. It does not belong to us. We belong to nature. We belong to land. We belong to sea. We are the children of land.
But Sjord was able to get the state to have social finance be incentivized, and that was able to bring a lot of people into the Terre de Liens. And I wonder if he would explain that a little bit more, because that's a major driver of the success of Terre de Liens.
Yeah, you mean, yes, but first I want to say that I noted also what the Terre de Liens is doing is liberate the land. In fact, that is what we do. We buy it free again, and it is just an example, and it is just small. It's a drop in the ocean, but it is an example which is recognized, and you should communicate on it. And that's also, I agree also very much on that we should all work on the land, but let us look things as they are. For the moment, I promote enormously the fact that if you are not bringing schools to every school in France and in Europe and everywhere should have a farm to have relations with, to go with, and that is not at all what is happening today in modern states. And so, for instance, in France, you have a few examples, and we work on that. We work a lot. Terre de Liens tries to work with local authorities to bring them to invest in local production of food. And we have even developed a sort of a site which is called Parcel, PARCEL, which gives the city the knowledge of how many land they need and how many people to produce at least a part of the food in the commune, in the city. And that is all that sort of things are, for instance, in France, we have a very nice example of a small city in the south of France, in the Côte d'Azur, all big cities and villas and so on. And there is a little village called Mouan-Sartou, and they bought the land the village bought land, a farm in middle of the town, nearly 5 hectares in the building, and they let work a man on that. They hired a farmer, and the farmer is with the children of the school making the food for the canteen of the school, and that is the way, the only way to go to make people again sensible for the work on the land, because they are not. If you go to Paris and London and you ask the people where the milk comes from, they don't know it. The children. That is a very severe situation, and there is not at all. You have the nice systems of Freinet, Montessori, and so on, but it's most of the schools are far off the relation to farms and to the land. Here and there you have a teacher who wants to do that, but the government and the whole politics on education that's the last thing they are going to put attention to. And so we should not. I agree, and I like your enthusiasm, Satish Kumar said, fantastic and I agree completely with you, because I think I have another Bible with me from Fukuoka who says the ultimate goal of farming is not the growing of crops, but the cultivation and perfection of human beings. I believe I've self the experience of 50 years now on the land. What was a real metamorphosis? I changed, and nature changed me, and that is so I am persuaded that can be a very nature, and the work on the land could be a very important instrument to change, to make change in the world. But it is only we, small Agrarian Trust, Terre de Liens, the Resurgence Trust, and so on. We try to we are like abbeys in the Middle Ages who saved some of the culture in a wild world, and maybe people are going to turn to us again as things become difficult. But
I very much agree with you that every school should have a farm associated with it. Every school should have a garden. I think it's a great idea, because at the moment children grow fear of nature, fear of food, fear of growing. I don't know how to grow. I don't know how to plant seeds. I don't know how. Children should experience the miracle and the magic of nature. How you plant one tomato seed in the soil, and that one tiny seed can make a beautiful plant and can produce 100 tomatoes, and each tomato has 20-30 more seeds in it. Regenerative nature of culture and regenerative nature of agriculture. Children should experience that. So children grow in fear of farming. They don't know how I grow, how I can farm. I don't know how to do it. They are ignorant. I think every school must have a garden and a farm. That's your great idea. I totally agree.
But if you want a school, if you want the teachers that they get formed for that, in France you have Terre Vivante. It's the only thing in France that exists where people can go and be taught how to learn children about agriculture. In the United States you have the stone barns or barn stones. How is it called, Severine? Huh?
Stone barns.
Stone barns. It invites everybody who wants to learn about it, and this I say all the time. But I'm listened a little bit, but not enough. But every region, at least in France, and there are 19, but I think more every department, and there are 90. Every department should have a sort of a center of formation where people can learn how to bring children and people in general in contact with the land. It exists, but it should be done.
There's a few questions coming in from the audience as well. I think that's absolutely right. But of course, one of the problems also for schools is access to land. And how do they, they can't afford to have land. So I think one of the questions that have just been come in from the audience is, in order to have these ideas materialize on a societal scale, it seems like the only way this is possible is through political change, through parliamentary change and laws. What are the panelists' thoughts on this? Severine, maybe you can answer that question from your perspective.
I'm sorry, I was looking in the chat and typing very bad.
Do you want me to repeat it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So in order to have these ideas materialize on a societal scale, it seems like the only way this is possible is through political change, through parliamentary change and laws. What do you think of that?
Well, this is why I was offering the provocation to Sjord, because we're in the US, we are living in a philanthropy culture and a land trust culture of easements and giving tax benefits for conservation. And on some level, that's been successful in preserving land, keeping it open, keeping beautiful agricultural land available for productive use. On the other hand, now we have a situation that is also a bit limiting, because we expect it to all happen as a kind of tax benefit. And in the case of the French, I think the history of the SAFER and the pressure in the 1960s of the young farmers raising their fists and saying, this consolidation of land, this corporate control of land, this gigantism of agriculture that was going on there and that has gone on everywhere in the world, cannot go forward. And so the young farmers made a political pressure strongly to their government, and they created this SAFER system. And then Sjord also succeeded in getting this state subsidized social investment money. And those two factors feel like very important to discern and describe a little bit in this conversation, because I agree that the number of acres in the US that will transfer ownership in the next 20 years is 400 million acres. So Vinoba would be very busy.
Yes.
In his Socratic method, convincing this land to be gifted. And so the actions and the survival of each region will really require us to re-regionalize our food system, reorganize our food system, re-diversify our food system, that we have actually to look reality in the face and say, my gosh, at the moment, the state is subsidizing crop insurance for crops that will never thrive because of flood, for crops that are drying up in the dust, for irrigation systems that are failing, for a system in crisis. So how are we getting back into a realistic relationship with the future? Well, it seems like each region is going to have to be doing a reality check and reconstituting our capacity to demand these things of our political system is a part of that. It's easy to be depressed by the violence and the antagony and the rhetoric of this moment. But if we don't get involved, we have no right to complain. And that means at the town level, it means at the state, it means legislatively, we actually don't have the option to let these lobbyists and these companies define the agenda and subsidize their own profitability. But I want to hear, because Sjord has very good information for us on this. Okay. Can you talk about the SAFER and the social finance, Sjord?
The SAFER is in itself a very, very important instrument. I would say it is for every country a good example. If it is governed as it has to be, and in France also, it is not really governed as it has to be. And one of the big, the idea is that if you sell a piece of land, SAFER is saying, you are not the first, who is the first one who needs that land? So if they decide who is on the list on the top to buy that land, and also about the price, they say the price is not a good price. And that makes that for the moment, instead of the 100,000 euros a hectare in Holland, or 20 or 30, 40,000 in England, and even in Spain and Portugal. In France, the average price is 6,200 for the moment. But what is going, the big problem is that the big investment funds have found a way to get the SAFER on the side. That means that you make a business, and the owner of the land keeps one part, and then it is not going to the SAFER for study. So you see, we even had an example of some Chinese invest funds who made a deal with big farmers in the middle of France to buy their land, and they made a company, and this company could not was not susceptible to go to the SAFER. So for the moment, the result is that more and more farmers leave, and that the farms become bigger and bigger. And one of the biggest scandals of the European policy is the agricultural policy, the CAP. The community agricultural policy is the biggest scandal of the European policy. It is only helping making the farms bigger and promoting the industrial. All the green talk around is not, the result is not the making the industrial agriculture bigger and bigger. And in the United States, it is not different.
Stuart, and maybe also to the rest of you, do you see, I mean, a totally different topic, but I was also quite curious to hear a little bit more about the tax that you were asking, Severine, that you were talking about the social, what is it called again? The possibility.
The social investment fund.
Yeah, exactly.
Huh? What? I don't.
Can you tell us a little bit about the social investment fund and the rules in France that made it possible for a lot of people to invest in farmland through.
Well, in fact, the farmer is not selling his land; he's bringing it in a company, and he keeps his own part in it. So it is not a real sale. It is that makes that it is. They try by law to change that, but for the moment it doesn't happen. It is not, and it is very much more used. It goes very quickly, and it is that means that they have found a way out. The SAFER system.
One of the biggest problem is that less and less people are going into agriculture, and in UK. No more than 2% of people are in agriculture. And even those 2% don't touch the soil. They sit in the tractor, they sit on machines, they run computers, they have become factory farms mostly. I would like to see more and more people learning to grow food. And that's why I like the idea of schools having farms.
It's necessary. It's the only way.
Wonderful idea. And universities. Not only schools, but also universities. This is why we at Schumacher College are trying to run courses on food, farming, and agriculture. And unless we have more people involved in the land, farming is becoming mechanized, industrialized, factory farms, robotics, and now people are talking about farms without farmers. They are talking about artificial intelligence bringing in. So you can have cars without drivers and farm without farmers. And humans don't need to do any work. That's a kind of trend, mainstream society going in that direction. So our work is a big challenge. How are we going to bring more interest and more skills among young people so they enjoy farming? They don't see that being a farmer is backward. If you are not educated, you are not intelligent, you are not clever, you are not smart, then you go into farming. If you are clever and intelligent and educated, then you go work in an office, work in a bank, or work in some kind of company. I think that culture has to change. Unless that culture changes, a few of us doing a bit of organic gardening here, organic farming here, agroecology here, agroecology there, it's not going to be enough. We need to make it a bigger movement so that more people respect farming and honor farmers, so that there is a more dignity to farmers. At the moment, there is no dignity. People don't want to go into farming because it's a kind of poorly paid and very little dignity.
Severine, you work a lot with young farmers, and I've also met quite a lot of people who are actually looking for land. I think that there are quite a lot of people who do want to work on the land, but they just can't get access to land.
That's right. Big
And then
problem.
I think there's also, isn't it true? I mean, I'm just looking at these questions that are coming in, and I'd like to ask you a few. One of them I think is quite relevant to what we were just discussing, and I was wondering how you would feel about that, Satisha and others. Can we and should we try to reverse global urbanization trends and consolidation of metropolitan areas? In some people, they say we should all live as close together as possible and
Yes.
leave the rest to nature.
No, I think we can bring agriculture and urban communities closer together. Number one, I would say London or Amsterdam or New York, around these big cities, 40 miles, 50 miles radius should be reserved for farming. And the food should come from those nearby areas. And the people from the city should be encouraged to go to farms for weekends, for holidays, to help the farmers, support the farmers, and learn from the farmers. Farmers should be our teachers, and we should respect them. So city people need to go out and work on the farms. But also within the city, you can have urban farms. And you can have animals. We have to redesign our cities so that there are gardens. I don't like the high-rise buildings where you see no tree, no water, no land, no soil, just kind of lift and electricity and the concrete buildings, concrete jungles. That's not my ideal of city. We need cities with lots of gardens and parks and trees and avenues of trees and even animals. And so why not have culture and agriculture living together?
Yes, absolutely. So I guess that's also about changing the culture.
We say
Sure.
we are working, as I said, on a very small scale. It's tiny compared with what is really happening in the world. But we try, like I said, the village of Mouansatou, we have quite a lot of connections with Sterdalien, with local authorities to help them to think about, to make conferences with elected people to show them what can be done in a village and in the town. And one of the advantages of the fact that in France we still have 36 cities and villages, 36,000 villages and towns who are independent and can decide themselves. So we have quite a good public, a big public, and little by little we get some cities and villages who want to work with us and think about it. And as I said before, we have the instrument of Parcel, P-A-R-C-E-L, and look it up in the internet. And it is a good help for people to change their mind, because it is a very hard thing, and it is a long work, and it is on a small scale, and besides that, things go the different way, and we can't help that. But this is what we can do, and especially all our farms, practically all our farms, are open for schools. We have an enormous. It is practically asked if you want to receive schools. And for instance, we have in the village, the town of Aubagne in the south of France, again a big city, rather industrial and so on. And we found with the mayor of that town, we bought 5 hectares in the middle of the town, besides a supermarket who wanted to have the soil for parking, and we got it. And now this is a center, blooming center of schools, children, people around, markets, and so on. It was a lot of money to buy it, and people said it's too expensive, we can't do it. We did it, and luckily we did it. It is this sort of examples that you must show, and the more we can show, the better it is. But it's still
marvelous. That is marvelous story. I like it. That's a marvelous. We need such examples, many more.
Yeah. And I'm just looking at the questions coming in. There's some really good ones, like I was going to ask Severine as well, would it be accurate to say that the earth owns itself and therefore has eminent domain since it serves all and in a way has governing authority over human beings? Does anyone want to answer that?
Well, I mean, if we look in geologic time, it's much easier to see how animate is the earth, and the volcanoes and the glaciers and the rising oceans, you know, are here as testimony. Every year on my land, the ocean comes and takes another few feet of the bank away. So in my lifetime, the question of this young people planting trees to restore the hydrologic health of their community, young people understanding the power of the river as a corridor of all life, the fish coming up, the leaves falling in, the insects being born, the birds being fed, the muskrat and the eagles and everybody. Well, around here, those rivers were the source of the Industrial Revolution. They were powering the first dams that captured the mechanical power of the river, and now they're wired up for electricity. And there's quite an interesting kind of parable there, because that makes them very suitable for tearing down the forest and putting a solar farm right along the river. So if the understanding is not shared that the ecological power of the river is greater than the mechanical power, or the power that can be generated by clear cutting the forest along its banks, then you have a tremendous insight about where we have to work together. And I don't know how else to do it than through, as you say, eco-literacy, and through the urgency of coping with these extreme weather events, forcing us to acknowledge our usefulness in repairing these functions and buffering our home systems against the demands of a more intense climate future. And so I feel like these very practical intersections of how we are navigating in our own home place, the decisions, the planning, just the decisions that we need to make as we discern where we're going together, and getting involved in the destiny of our home place, you know, like it really mattered, like we really had to, because we really have to. So I think that the speed of the change that we're experiencing, and the young people born today have already seen these extremes. They believe it completely. They don't have to wonder if climate change is real. They believe it. And so for them, I think it will be much easier to believe that Earth is animate and has her own volition in the situation, and that our private property laws are as arbitrary as a chain link fence that's ripped up by a tornado.
It's there was actually a follow-on question for that, Severine, that says, to probe Severine's idea on going deeper to the part of human psyche beyond the wound of colonization, which calls to connection and relationship to the land, how do we partner or meet the need of movements calling for reparations while advancing a deeper universalist tradition of reconnection and regeneration?
Ooh.
Ooh. Well, and of course, the first rule of improv is yes and, both together, gently, kindly, with tenderness. And I think the other part is that the commons framework helps us build momentum in a region. So for instance, you would think of two very different parcels, arbitrary legal boundaries around a part of the living earth. And you think, so one of them is in the city and it's strewn with broken glass, and it's a bunch of young punks who want to do food justice, or it's a collective who want to do herbal medicine. And then you have in the countryside, 2 hours away, some nice organic farmers who have 300 CSA shares and a legacy of lots of interns who've worked there. These are very different farm communities who arise around these two different types of farms. But if there's connectivity in the commons, and we're part of a network together, and we're sharing information, like in the system that Sjord and the Terre de Liens have created, the Access to Land Network in Europe. Then you have experience sharing, you have relationships between these systems, and you have people moving just like mushrooms move information and materials across the forest. And you have greater connectivity, solidarity, and intersectionality, shared cause, so that these cannot stay as racialized or ghettoized or homogeneous, because this is a major struggle. I mean, in the US, most of the farmers are white. Most of the land is owned by white people. You know, most of the land is owned by old white people. And changing that does mean that there has to be a tension, a change, a reclaiming. And we have to actually have confidence that we can do that in order to achieve it. So feeling that confidence, I think, is easier when we're working with many kinds of brains together and with different kinds of farming systems that are unified by shared cause, instead of just, you know, expecting it all to happen from within one farm. We're much stronger together.
Severine mentioned the access to land movement in Europe. I think I want to make a short remark on that. We have put together all sort of initiatives comparable with Terre de Liens in different countries in Europe, and one of the biggest problems is that in the world of what we call the undercurrent of change, there are a lot of actors, and all these actors act on their own, and they speak together, but they don't act together. It is very much devised, and I am actually, and you know it very well, I'm working a little bit with some Dutch organizations who are doing like Terre de Liens. There are at the moment 5 or 6 of these organizations. They work a little bit together, but the only thing my message for all these countries in Germany, in England is you have a lot of initiatives, but they are not together. They are not strong for the only thing that we should need to change politics to another educational program, to another style of land management. It is all political, as you say, and if you want to change politics, you should make a strong stakeholder coalition who has influence. And that is a very much one of the biggest problems. The big farmer organizations of Europe has a building in Brussels with 60 people working only on lobbying. But on the other hand, you have IFWAM at the bureau, you have the Via Campesino as a bureau, the Friends of the Earth have a bureau, the church organizations have a bureau, and so on. And the environmentalists, all they have there, and they speak together, but they don't act together. And that is one of the, I say to all, they're going to make a strong forum about land access in your country. That is the first thing to do. And that is that's a message that I'm very happy to promote here again.
I think we're kind of running out of time now. We only have another 4 minutes. Unfortunately, we have so many good questions, but we should kind of move on to the final remarks. Maybe just one quick question. I think that's one of the things that you were discussing also, is do you see land value taxes as a potential means to change the incentives related to land ownership and foster the transition?
Henry George said already, if you are not make taxes of 90% on land speculation, things are going the wrong direction. And that is the first thing to do, is make a very, very heavy tax movement on land speculation.
Yeah. And of course, you need that coalition and solidarity between movements to
Absolutely.
change
Absolutely.
those kind of rules as
Yeah.
well. So it's been really great having this conversation. I think we could go on for the rest of the night. And I wish I could, but I think we should move on to the final remarks. And I would like to ask Sjoerd, first of all, to give us some final remarks for a few minutes, and also especially look at what could be positive. I mean, there's been a lot of positive action items. What would you like to give to the audience? How could they start?
Well, in Terre de Liens, for instance, we also have an enormous amount of everywhere in France of volunteers who are going to markets, saloons, big organization, the agricultural exhibitions and so on, and make a stand and tell about Terre de Liens. We must communicate. And my message is, I gave a message just going together, making a strong stakeholder coalition. And I think also that we need to go on with a little bit of hope. That's all I want to say. I can, as you say, I can go on for hours because we have a lot of subjects. But I think from time to time and getting older, I think how are we going to arrange these sort of things? But I still go on, and I think we should go on, and we should go on and fed by hope. Thank you.
I think, thank you very much. And Terre de Liens has given a lot of people inspiration and hope for sure. Severine, would you like to? Well,
the gift of land is the gift of confidence and the gift of sovereignty. And I would just say that the same is true in this intergenerational moment politically, that one of the things I see really needed is encouraging people in my generation to take leadership, political leadership, cultural leadership. There's so much money, and why doesn't that money want to flow quickly towards the leadership of each region in its own destiny? How do we articulate our demands, as Sjoerd would say, where the people, who are saying no to the big factory fish farms, or no to the water grabs, or no to the land grabs in forestry, but those are often parallel silos of activism. But in fact, we're all asking for the same thing, which is, how do we have a holistic plan of how we will preserve the livability of our home region? So that demand is made only if we have the power of persuasion over this next generation to actually get involved in doing this work. And so I would just say, especially to the generation who are more in the Schumacher generation, if you could mentor another couple of young ones in your views and in the confidence that they will need to jump in.
We do.
I know you do. And I say thank you so much. And then to the young ones, when the old ones take the time to help you lead, then make sure you're showing up and having discipline. So I feel like that's also the moment that we're in, is we have to actually decide, well, let's take it into our own hands, because it's nobody else going to do it for us.
Well, I can tell you that my hope is fed by the young generation in Terre de Liens. That's absolutely one of the fine things to live.
Thank you. Satish.
Thank you. I think it has been a wonderful conversation. I've enjoyed it. I would say all of us can do three things. First and foremost, we have to be an example ourselves. No good preaching others. We have to be the example. Only thing can change is be the example. If you are not a gardener, become a gardener. If you have a garden, continue to be a gardener. If you have no farm, become associated with the farm. Help a farmer. Touch the soil. That is the first thing we have to do. Rather than hitting government will do it, industry will do it, farmers will do it, they should change, they should change, they should change. No, we should change. So start with yourself, number one. Number two, communicate these ideas to your fellow human beings. Communicate, dialogue. We can't do these ideas without spreading those ideas together. So be the change, communicate the change. That's a second step. The third step is, as we already said, and I'm just summarizing it, work with others. We have to co-create. No one person can change the world. We have to build a movement. Apartheid came to an end because it was a big movement. Martin Luther King and racism was a big movement to bring end to racism. India's independence came because it was a big movement for independence. So we have to create a big movement to join others. So work together. So there are three things you can do. Be the change, communicate the change, and join others to change. And then
you are, so I am.
You are, so I am. That's right. That's right. And so read my book. If you can do that, read my book. You are, therefore I am. You are, so I am. In French and in English. And so be the change, communicate the change, and join others to change. And then don't worry about what the results will be. Results are not in our hands. Results are not under our control. But action is under our control. We can act and act and act. So be an activist, communicate your change, and join others to change. That's all we can do.
Exactly. I think those are wonderful messages to everyone. Find a piece of land and protect it, do what you can with it, and farm it. I just wanted to thank you all. Really, thank you, Satish, Severin, and Stuart. It's been wonderful to have you all together and to hear everything. I feel that it's a real privilege, and I just wish we had more time. So I just want to thank everyone who joined us as well, everyone who was online and sent in questions. I'm sorry we couldn't answer them all. So I would also recommend for everyone to look at the list of allied organizations and read about them and see the type of work that they're doing. Also, maybe near to you, get involved. We have them in the chat, so you can click on those and also look at the organizations, some in Europe and also in the UK and in the US. So
and those in New England are very welcome to come if they don't have already a relationship with a farm. They're all very welcome to come and visit us on our farm. We made some camping platforms for families to come and pick all different colors of berries.
fantastic.
So if you're in the Schumacher home region, we're not so far from you.
And how can they reach you?
Well, Greenhorns is here and Severine Farm, and I think it's in the bio.
Yeah, it's in the bio, yeah. So also, I just wanted to also mention next month's conversation, the next panel. It will take place on May 18th, and the theme is activating stagnant capital. That's exactly what Severin was talking about as well. And also, of course, the whole idea of gifting or land gifting, or how do we, there's so much money around. I think it's really going to be a very interesting conversation. The panelists will be Chuck Collins of inequality.org, Alfred Demelish, and Kate Poole, both from Resource Generation. We hope you'll join us for the next panel on the 18th of June, but also come and look. Every month we have a really interesting conversation about different topics. They're all on the website with a panel like this. Once again, thank you all for joining us, and Have a great evening, Dave.
And thank you, Natasha, for this wonderful chairing and wonderful coordinating and organizing everything on time. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to David and Jared and Susan and the rest of the Schumacher staff behind the scenes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.